Hey guys, Justin here. Now this is going to be my final video of the year, but I'm basically going to be looking at the Axis in Normandy to ask one question. Does the Axis suffer in Normandy? Now, I'm not going to be talking about Moscow, Tunisia and Berlin, which by the way, I'm just going to label if I do agree or disagree on the screen right now, over which, if I think that they agree, if I agree or disagree, that if they do actually suffer. Now, this is going to be different with Normandy. I'm going to show you reasons I believe the Axis can suffer, reasons where the Axis do suffer, and reasons where they don't really suffer. Now, I'm going to start with the reasons why, then I'm going to show you some of the Axis's main strengths, before basically putting my final thoughts on this in the at the final. Anyways, that being said, let's start with the reasons why they might quote-unquote suffer. The first reason is, I'm going to have to talk about it, the Allies have some incredibly powerful vehicles, especially the Jumbo and the P-47. In fact, I made a video on the P-47 where I literally said this is probably the most powerful aircraft in the game for a new player, because it's basically a fighter, a bomber, a sea, and a close air support, literally combined into one. You've got the bombs, so you can bomb the hell out of people. You've got the HVARs for close air support, and these things can destroy Panthers, might I add. I've destroyed Panther A's and the Panther G's, I believe that's what it is in Berlin, the Berlin version of the Panthers. And of course you have the machine guns, which can not only take out infantry on attack runs, but can also do heavy damage to aircraft. Meanwhile, you've got the Jumbo, which is of course one of the most notorious tanks of the game. Its armour is incredibly tough and is almost impossible to pen because, well, look at that. It's basically just a big front plate with 72mm of steel behind it. Now, I have noticed in the comments that that was the case, and that was a mistake on my behalf in the tank guide video, in the tank X-ray video, so forgive me on that one. And really, the Axis didn't really have much that could combat the Jumbo, because the Jumbo would be able to deal damage, and it was very hard to take out from the front. It's still very hard to take out from the front, as you have to always go from the side, attacking around here and here, aiming for these ammo racks here and here, failing that, hitting the engine near the back, or hitting around here. So yeah, there is that to contend with. The second thing which the Allies have is very good close range capabilities. Now, I would argue, if you look at the max level Axis, their close range capabilities is kind of limited. You have a lot of, you've got a lot of SMGs like the Beretta, the MP35, the ZK, the other Beretta, the MP40, and in terms of rifles, you've got the FG42, but that's it really. Like, the MG34 and the 42 aren't that good in close range. Brader's just shit in general. And the Allies have so many good close range options. You've got the Thompson, you've got the Sten, you've got the Lancaster. Even look at the, I would say the Hyde and the Carbine are really good close range options as well. You've also got some other okay options at close range. You've got some pretty bad options like the Winchester and the Grease Gun. You've also got the M2 Carbine, which I would say the only way this beats the FG42 is when you use it in close range. The same with the M1 Carbine. The only way this beats the FG42, the only way this is actually good is in very close range, where you can use, your high magazine and your 2-shot kill capability to great effect. You also have the BAR, and to a lesser extent the Bren. The Bren is a little bit more, it's not as good in close range as the BARs, but it's still pretty good in close range. As well as that, you've also got the Garand. Now, I know there is also the... This is going to move on to the next fault, with the Axis, which I think is going to be the final one, they don't actually have a semi-automatic grenade launcher variant. Now, if you look at the Americans, they get the Garand with the grenade launcher. They also get the Carbine with the grenade launcher. The Axis don't get either. They get this, which I've already put as the worst weapon in the Axis arsenal, which I haven't unlocked it yet, but I can still safely say, with a straight face, this will be the worst weapon in the Axis arsenal in Normandy for a long time, because of its high cost and the fact that it is so far in the tech tree. It should be a lot sooner in the tech tree, at least before the FG42. The shooting cup, I don't mind the shooting cup as much, and I really only put the shooting cup in at, I think it was number 3 or number, I can't remember where I put it, or number 4, it was one of those two. I only put it literally out of trial of elimination, basically, as it's not a bad weapon. This is a bad weapon, though. And I'm just going to have to say, there's another real bad, speaking of bad weapons as well, the Axis don't actually get a good LMG until level 19. The Allies get the Bren, the Axis get the Braider. This thing is almost unusable. Like, I know that is realistic though. That is realistic that the Braider was, because the Braider in real life was almost unusable. But unless you're using the premium squad, you've got no real LMG option until you unlock this MG34. There's a reason why I would say it's actually better for the Axis with the, if you've got with the Rifleman squads, if you have, this split to go for the Assaulter. I often go for the Machine Gunner because I prefer the MG42. But with the regular squad, it's better to go for the Assaulter because the Axis have so many better Assaulter, compared to LMGs. However, I'm now going to have to talk about where the Axis actually do make a good, where they are actually better than the Allies. So let's start with that. The first reason is it's going to have to be the FG42. Now, obviously, I did kind of bash the FG42 at the beginning, when the Allied section said it was worse than the M2 at close range. But here's the thing: it's worse than the M2 at close range, but it's better at longer ranges. The FG42 at long range is one of the best weapon, if not the best weapon in the game. It is one of the most dirty, powerful weapons in the game, and you get 2 of them. You get the FG42-2 here. These FG42-2s are really dirty powerful. They're even more powerful than the FG42 regular. If you used it in Berlin, you'll know why. Oh, was it flicked? I had no idea why it was flipped that way, but yeah, you can see it's a lot. There's also a few other weapons like the Gewehr 43 Kurz, which the Allies don't have any answer to. Like, and I'm just going to highlight the point as well. The MP43-1 as well. It's basically it's basically an assault rifle, really, and yeah, that's another thing the Allies don't have. They don't have a good assault. They don't have an assault rifle weapon in the game. They've only got, the closest they have to match this is the Thompson, and even then, the Thompson is really is again an SMG. I won't bash the Thompson. I will say that the M1A1 Thompson is my favourite weapon in the game, and I still say it's still my favourite weapon in the game. But even I admit that sometimes the the MP43-1 is still one of the most overpowered weapons in the arsenal that you can get in this game. You also, of course, have weapons like the MP40, which are pretty strong. You have weapons like the Beretta, which are very good at close range. You've got, and this Beretta, which is honestly one of the better SMGs in the game. And I'm going to move on to the next point as well, which is the machine guns, especially the MG34 and 42. And it's kind of like the same thing with the MP43, that the Allies have no real answer to them because, well, they don't have an M19, 19, A4, A6 yet. So, really, these things have no real answer to them. And you can basically just cut through waves upon waves of infantry. Like, I've literally destroyed people trying to push the trade with the MG42 and the MG34 with relative ease. And, you know, it's, if you look at something, you know, if you look at the 42, you know, that's a very powerful weapon. The 34 is also pretty powerful as well. Like, the 34, the 42 are very good. As well as this, another thing I need to address, the anti-tank weapons. The American, well, the Allies only get one good anti-tank weapon, which is the Piat. The Axis get two. They get the Sturm pistol and the Panzerfaust. Now, I know people say, but the Sturm pistol's terrible. It's not terrible. You can destroy jumbos with it. Stop spreading that negative propaganda. It's not a terrible weapon. The Faust is a superior weapon, don't get me wrong. I will honestly, hand on heart, say I prefer the Faust to the Sturm pistol. But, yeah, I could have to say, yeah, the Panzerfaust, compare that to the Piat. I would say that the Panzerfaust is even better than the Piat as well. The Piat is still a strong weapon, but compare it to this thing, which is pretty shit. You've really got no competition. Look, the bazooka's only real upside is that you can use it at longer ranges than the Piat. I think you can use it up to like 400 meters, which is pretty strong, but yeah, not really the best weapon to use in the game. And also, let's talk about this. Panthers. The Panther, in my opinion, is the strongest tank in Normandy at the moment. You really can't go anything wrong with the Panther. Like, nothing the Allies have can take out the Panther at close range, apart from the M10. And most people don't even run the M10. I don't even run the M10 anymore, because I don't really have a use for it. Like, the M10 is the only tank that can actively take out the Panther. The Rhino, you could put, like, if you could flake around it with, say, the Rhino or the Jumbo, or even the Stuart, or the Scott, you know, any tank really, you can flank around it, you can probably kill it, but the only tank that can go, you know, face to face with the Panther is the M10, which, and maybe the Firefly as well, but that's a premium tank, so no one cares. You know, Churchill might be good, but I've never actually gone up against a Churchill yet, which is good and bad. And more to the point as well, like, that's it really. Like, most tanks the Panther can take out. Like, the M10, like, you can beat the M10 quite easily. Now, I have beaten many Panthers in one-on-one duels where even they've got the first shot off in, you know, because I knew where to fire mostly, because the Panther's got really, really weak. Like, look how much ammo this is. Like, you literally hit around here, you're hitting the ammo racks and killing the entire crew. But compared to, say, but if you compare it to, you know, the Jumbo, for example, which, and also, as well as that, the Allies don't even have that much good HE, no, not HE, they don't have any good AP, other than the Scott has heat, which is kind of, you know, it's cut in half because A has little ammo, and B, the Scott is not that good. And the M10 also has similar. I think it has. I can't remember which one it has. I think it has the same one as the main Axis tanks, like the Panther and the Panzer IV. And yeah, like, you know, everything else this is normal straight hitting AP, which doesn't do much damage really to crew. So you have to basically just aim for target for the main positions on tanks. The final thing I'm going to have to talk about, early Axis is much better than early Allies. And even then, late Axis as well. On average, I would say each late Axis up unlocked, so past level 20, and pre-level 11. On average, all of these are better than the Allied variants. The Puma is better than the, in my opinion, is better than the Stuart. The Maz, I would say, is the only thing worse. The FNAB, I would say, is probably worse. That's the same. That's about the same. Sturm pistol, probably worse. But you look at the MP40, the Panzer 3N, and even post this, you look at the Gewehr 43 Sniper, you look at the M1918, the Panzer 4J and the Sherman are probably about identical. You know, the MG34 mixed with the BAR, you know, there's a lot of, you know, which are more apple and pears. But then you get into the later stuff, you know, the MP35, I'd argue, is much better than the STEM. The same goes with the FG42 too over the, over the M1 Garand Sniper. The FG42 obviously is overpowered. The ZK is probably about as good as the Lancaster. Beretta is probably worse than the, Flammenwerfer, around the same. Panzerfaust is much better than the Bazooka. Panther is much better than the M10, and of course, the MP43-1 is probably one of the most overpowered weapons in the game. So the Axis do have a lot of overpowered weapons. It's just that many people will just submit to the Allied overpowered weapons and equipment and say, "Oh, this is why the Axis suffer." You know, they've got the Jumbo, they've got the P47, but in reality, it doesn't make sense. Also, I know people say it, but premium squads really don't, like, I know the premium squads for the Allies are probably superior to the premium squads for the Axis. Like, for example, you know, the Stug versus the Churchill. The Panzer 4J is definitely, I'd argue, is the worst premium squad in the game. The Panzer 3N is pretty bad. The BF 1910 is pretty bad. Some of these squads are pretty meh. But yeah, it's like, and meanwhile, you look at some of the, you look at the Allies, they get, like, the Chaffee, which is an okay tank. They get the Jumbo again. They get the Firefly, which is really strong. And you get the Churchill, which I've got a whole other video on that. But yeah. So, I'm just going to go on to the final, what I think my final thoughts are on whether I think the Axis suffer or not. So, do the Axis actually suffer? Not really. Like, they've got a lot of really, especially in Normandy, they've got a lot of really powerful weapons and equipment. Now, do the Allies suffer because of this? No, again. They have a lot more powerful weapons as well that contradict the Axis. Like, for example, the Axis have much more powerful weapons at mid-range. You know, the MP43-1, the FG42. But to make up for this, the Allies get the M2 Carbine, the BAR, the M1A1 Thompson, and the Piat, which I think are much better close-range weapons. They also have, in my opinion, some really powerful, you know, they both sides to have really powerful options. The, you know, for example, the P47, the Panther for the Axis. But I think neither side suffer. Now, it's not like, say, for example, in Berlin, for example, where loads of people say, "Oh, the Axis suffer because the PPSH," which I don't believe that's entirely true. Like, I've seen people, I mean, I've beaten people with PPSHs at close range with the VG2, so really it's, again, a matter of, you know, the skill of the players behind the weapons, really. But do the Axis actively suffer in Normandy? No. Anyways, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you guys have enjoyed. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and I'll see you guys in the next one.